Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today I'm going to be using some stuff from our new Happy Hearts release. I'm using the Clover Petals 3D embossing, and then the rest of the items are all part of like a set. It's called A Little Note, and there is a stamp, coordinating dies, as well as stencils. And this is just such a good set. Like, it's so versatile. So let's get into what we're doing here. I'm stamping this down in our intense black ink. I am going to be using the stencils, but then I'm also going to be just adding some details with my alcohol markers. It isn't necessary, but a part of making my videos, I like to kind of show you how you can make it your own or make it a little bit extra. And so that is the point of combining the two. So here is my like general color scheme, and I found this off of, I just keep a board on Pinterest for like color combinations that I like, and you guys know if you've been watching my videos recently that I've been trying to kind of break out of the same old, same old. Sometimes I'm good at that, sometimes not so much. But this time we did something a little different, and I think it's super cute. So it's like a dark purple, a corally color, a dark, like a hunter-ish kind of green, and then a more muted green. So this is the first stencil, and I laid that down, and I'm starting out. I wanted the majority of my the majority of my flowers to be purple, and so that's why I'm going in with the seedless preserves. Something to note on this is this colors your whole flower, and then the next layer colors like the second layer of the flower. So if you're like me, where I did a darker color as my base, you're not going to necessarily see your next color if it is a lighter one. However, because I'm using distress inks, like colors will layer on top of other colors. So you can still see that there is a change to the tone by adding this dried marigold over top of it. But it isn't going to be like super in your face. So if you want two distinct layers, you will either have to start with your lightest color and then use the darker color for your top layers, or you will have to do what I do, which is use some other type of medium. I chose alcohol markers, but you could use colored pencils or, you know, whatever. And then from there, the third stencil does the one set of the leaves, and this is the bundled sage that I'm putting down. And then the last layer does do some of the inside of the flowers, as well as the more, I guess, like the more branchy style leaves, I guess is how I would describe them. And for that, I used the pine needles. So did it bother me that the inside of my flowers were green? Nope, not in the slightest. So I will say this, that I know sometimes these images that have like a bunch of florals can be a little bit overwhelming to color because they are on the smaller side, but the stencils make it like super easy. And then going back in with an additional medium, whether that's colored pencils or markers, really does make it go super fast, which I'm totally here for, because you guys know that I'm just on limited time. So here I showed you the colors that I used. I actually didn't end up using the YR24. I thought I was going to, but I didn't end up using it. And then from here, I am just pretty much adding like a little bit of shading to sections where I want to kind of have a little bit more dimension. The only other thing I did, which is what I'm doing here, is I actually took it's a YR02, and it matches that dried marigold pretty closely, and I went over, there's like little dots drawn into this wreath, and I just went over those. The only reason I did this was to add more of this like peachy coral color, because I thought that my card design I would want more. And then for the leaves, I just did like one little flick of color at the base of each leaf. And for the florals, I did, like you can clearly see now that we're kind of up close and personal with it, that some of the flowers have two layers. And so I used those markers to add just some dimension to help lift up the top layer of the flower, or just give them kind of more dimension overall by adding a little bit of shading around the center. Again, this isn't something that you have to do. I think the stencils do a really good job of getting the image colored for you. So if you're like, I just need a quick card, something like this with a, stamp stencil die is going to be pretty helpful in just getting something well done very quickly. So for my purples, I actually used two. I used a V09 and a V06, and I used two of them just so that I could get my color. The V09 is pretty strong, and I wanted it to blend into my ink blending, and so that's where the V06 comes in. I did not completely cover the flowers or the ink blending. I just used that lighter color to blend in the darker one. So that's that about the coloring. You can see that this is, well, it's not a short video by any means. It's a little bit shorter for me, just because like this went super fast. I really like this set. I think it's like I said, you could use it for a bunch of things. I could see this being used for Mother's Day. I could see it being used as a sympathy card. There's tons of really good like sentiments in there. The one I use says you're my favorite, but you could use the just a little note, which means you could literally send it for anything. And then they have the to my bestie, I love you more. So there's just really good ones. So here, now that all my coloring is done, I added some detail with my white gel pen because that's how I roll. Like I said, making the things a little bit extra, or the things look like they are mine, that they are my creations. And then I'm going to die cut this out. So with the die cut, it does come with the heart in the center. You can leave it in and cut it as one whole piece, or you can cut them together so that the heart comes out and it is like a true wreath, which is how I chose to use it. And then I was like, now from here, where do I want to go with it? And so I pulled out a couple of pieces of colored cardstock to see what I wanted to use. Basically all the colors that were kind of already in my wreath, to see which one I liked better. The purple is the one that I like the most, but even then it felt like a little bit too much. So I tried it on a neutral. This is Craft, and that one was not bad, but ultimately nobody is shocked here. I liked it best on white. I felt like it really let the colors shine through, and that's what I was happy with. So that's what I went with. I did spritz the back of my paper super lightly, so that way I would get a nice deep impression with my 3D embossing folder. And this one is, like I said, it's the clover petals, but I think it's just a really pretty, there's so many like 3D embossing folders out there now that are just like great neutrals to add texture. So here I felt like it was a little bit plain. And so I wanted to see if I wanted to maybe matte it, which I did like better. Felt like it kind of pulled the purple out. And so I decided to go ahead and commit to this and then trim down my embossed panel. And I just trimmed it down 1/4 of an inch on each side, so that way I would have not a huge border of the purple, but just a little bit. The other super cool thing about this set, and it is true about I think it's the friendship frame from this release as well. So it has a stamp for a banner, and it has the die cut for that stamp, but it also includes a 3D banner that you can die cut out and then just kind of adhere together to build your own banner. And I love this so much. First of all, banners are timeless. You can put them on anything. But it gives you the option to add more dimension to this set. And so I chose to use the 3D banner. Like I said, I super loved it. I thought it was a great something extra to include. And then this is how it stacks up so that you can see all the little pieces parts. And I wanted to put this across-ish the middle, not exactly the middle, because I wanted you to still be able to see it was a heart, but I didn't like the plain white. So I'm going to add, again, I'm going to try to bring in more of that dried marigold because I don't have a lot of it on my card. And it is a really pretty color. I think I would like to combine this with like worn lipstick and see if I could get like a really true corally color. So I'm going to have to try that on a different card. But anywho, so I'm adding some shading for the bottom piece. I didn't add shading in from the sides like I did with the other two. I added shading just where the kind of like the banner, like the tails meet the body of the banner, because when you put the top layer on, that's where the shadows would be. And again, so I'm checking my card. I'm like, okay, I'm liking where this is going, but it still looks a little meh. I tried putting the colored heart back in, and I did not like that. I toyed around with maybe to whether or not to cut through the middle so you could see the purple heart through the middle. I checked to see, again, on the green to see if maybe I would like the coral heart better with a green background. Newsflash, I didn't. But sometimes you just kind of have to play around with your card idea. In this set, in addition to the wreath, Honeybee has also included the flowers and the leaves as singles. And so because they have done this, you're able to kind of build up your wreath as much as you would like, which means you could, you know, stamp these, die cut, like color them, die cut them, and adhere them up over the top of the stamp. Or in the case of what I did, I actually added them to the outside of the wreath to just kind of fill the card up a little nicer, and to, again, going back to that, giving it something a little bit extra and making it more versatile. So you can use it as is and it's beautiful, or you can do these other things, and not all of them. You could do some of them or none of them, or, you know what I mean, just this one or that one. You know, pick whatever works for you, to kind of make the design your own. I'm coloring these in exactly the same way that I colored them on the stamp where I did the ink blending. And I have to say, I was pretty impressed. They matched really well to what was already ink blended. The only difference is for the leaves that I stamped, I did use both of the greens in order to recreate the look of the dried marigold over the seedless preserves. I did go back in with my YR02 and go right over my purples so that the second layer of the flower was consistent throughout with that kind of coral tint to the purple. And that was just for continuity for me. That, again, isn't necessary. You could make them the same or different, or, you know, whatever's floating your boat. So what do we have for story time? I don't really think there's too much. We got up this morning, well, Eric did. I have been just completely overwhelmed this week with all of the things I've had going on, and so I was up very late last night. So he very nicely swapped days with me and got up with our daughter this morning so that I could stay up late last night and then sleep in. And then we had Peanut's basketball game, which his basketball games are always at different times, and this one happened to be like right smack dab in the middle of what would have been Caitlin's lunchtime. So before we left, Eric packed some Cheerios and some little snacky things. I made her a peanut butter and jelly and cut it up so I could just feed her the pieces. So that way when we got home, I would just be able to lay her down, and there again, it wasn't even me. It was my husband who ended up laying her down, even though I offered to. He was like, no, I got it. Thanks, though. So I really appreciate him kind of stepping up and doing those things, since I've been super overwhelmed. And I know that he has too, because that's just kind of the life that you live when you have little ones, and there's always somebody that needs something. So here what I'm doing is I obviously had everything kind of laid out, and the reason that I cut that part is because it took me a while to figure out where I was going to lay them out. But I am doing my best to adhere the ones in the center to the actual wreath so that way I can pop all of it up. And I'll be honest with you, if I hadn't have added these little extra pieces, I probably would have just cut one or two more of the wreaths and then popped them up that way, so I could have avoided the foam tape altogether. But because I added those extra flowers, I didn't want to take the time to die cut the extra flowers in order to make sure everything was flush, so I just accepted that I was going to have to use foam tape again. So here I've adhered this down flat to my purple card base. You may notice here while I'm doing the foam that there's some stamping on the back. That's because the first time I stamped this, I totally messed it up, and the paper moved on me, and it was what it was. But I'm a cheap chicken, and I'm not throwing out the paper. So since I knew I wasn't going to be heavily Copic coloring on this, I just decided to flip that paper over and stamp it again, and it worked fine, and nobody will ever know that they're stamping on the other side, except me, and of course you, because you've watched this video. So once I had that popped up, I just took the other flowers that I had die cut and kind of tucked them underneath there to just, again, it just kind of extends it out, fills the card up a little bit better, changes up the design a little bit, and I was really happy with the way that it came out. So anywho, it's just been a little bit crazy. Like, both of our schedules have been more crazy than usual with all the things that we have going on, and so everything is just a little overwhelming. But we'll get through it. It's just kind of that way when you have little people. But this is something to look forward to. Both of them, actually, they're twins. Here, I totally cheated. This sticky mat from My Sweet Petunia for the Misty is supposed to fit in the traditional size, but I had pulled out the mini, so I literally just set it on top of there. I just set it on top of there because I knew I was only going to stamp my sentiment, and I didn't need the whole thing to be flat, and it worked just fine. So I stamped my sentiment, and then I went on to building my banner. Two of his friends, they're twins. It's their birthday, and so they're having a little get together tonight, and so we haven't had a date night in about 100 years. So I am super excited to kind of get out with him and spend some time together that is not taking care of children or running errands or any of those things. So that should be something super fun tonight. With the banner, you can see I just added a little bit of dimension by doing a line of color underneath kind of each one of the layers. For this banner, I knew that I was gonna, like, the middle was gonna have to be supported, and so you can see I've actually switched foam tapes, and that's because this one, which is by Picket Fence Studios, is actually thicker than the Scotch foam tape, and so it would accommodate the other layers of cardstock that I have in place with the foam tape, like the wreath part. So I put glue on each one of the tails of the banner, and then I just used that thicker piece of foam tape in the center. Alternatively, you could use 2 layers of the Scotch foam tape. Here in this release, Honeybee has released pearls and gems. I'm going to tell you right now, in the industry, Honeybee's pearls and gems are my favorite. They release the best ones. Fight me. I mean, they are the best. They're so easy to use. They have such great color schemes. And so I ultimately chose to go with the gems. They have these ones that are kind of like a peachy yellowish kind of vibe, and I thought that they worked really nicely with what I had going on. They are terribly hard to see on camera though, so maybe in the photos you'll be able to see them, but in real life, absolutely beautiful. Of course, I added extra glitters to all of the flowers, and then that is it. That is the whole card. So I hope that you are inspired to maybe bust out of your color scheme, try something different, make something a little extra. Buy this card. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate you. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.